connected to the community around you, and a lot of reasons are for like there's a lot of different reasons for that, and some of it's
Mhm.
just like everyone's antisocial attitude and behavior and stuff like that. But also, I just think that there's just less connection with your neighbors and the people in your physical proximity than they're used to, because you maybe just don't rely on them as much as you did back in the day, because we have door-to-door delivery and Instacart, or whatever kind of stuff that takes away from like, oh, I got to go ask my neighbor for a cup of sugar, or I'm sick, I got to see if they can pick up my medication, or whatever it is. But when something like a natural disaster happens, or lots of snow, or a flood, or whatever it is, you kind
Or
of,
a fire,
or a
perhaps.
fire, yes, definitely a fire. You kind of figure out like, oh, you do rely on these people in your neighborhood more than you would think so, or more so like they're sharing close proximity with you, so they're going through the same struggle as you, and that can unite you more than whatever would unite you is with your online community or whatever. So it gives you like a chance to actually engage with like real existing local community, even if it's not for great terms. Like it's not, shoveling my neighbor's driveway. It's not the end of the year kickback at the end of the street, block party
Right.
that I would hope it is, but it is a
Yeah.
way to get in contact with them in a meaningful sense.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like it's a fucking compassionate, nice thing to do. It's like it makes people feel good when somebody around them shovels their driveway, and it might not seem like very profound or anything, but it is the kind of thing where it's just like, I think there is genuinely something to the fact of just like, hey, like the guy that shoveled my driveway, who was like considerate enough to do that, would like probably help me if I needed to be driven to the hospital.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a nice thing. A lot of people live alone, you
Hmm.
know. Um, that's a good thing to do.
That was one of the main motivators for me, is like I woke up the morning we had all the snow, and I thought of, right next to me I have this lady. She's like 92 years old. She's lived in the house for 53 years. When I first moved in, she was like, oh, it's nice to see some people like moving into the neighborhood. I've been here 53 years, and I just see people come and go and blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh, you know what? She would probably, I mean, she definitely can't shovel her driveway herself. So who knows? So I went out there at first to try to shovel her driveway off. And she
mhm.
came out midway through me doing it. And she stopped me. She thanked me, obviously, but then she stopped me and she goes, I got my grandson coming up here to do that. And I got to make sure he comes up and actually does it. Because if he don't, I got a thing or two for him. And I'm going to teach him a lesson. And I'm like, okay, okay. So this is like a
So
mechanism.
you had to leave some work for him.
Yeah, I left like half the driveway because it's like she's using it as a way to, I guess, like, teach some level of familial responsibility to her grandchild or whatever.
Yeah, keeping
Um,
him honest.
yeah, yeah, but it was kind of funny. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. I thought, just figured I'd help out a little bit. And she's like, no, I appreciate it, but I got to make sure this kid's not a piece of shit.
No, that rocks. Well, dude, now you're unlocking lore about your neighbors now.
Right. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so her grandkid may be kind of a fuck off. I don't really know. And I can keep my eye out, make sure he does show up, and then I can, reconfirm my own suspicions about him if he doesn't.
Right, right. You've got your cork board with like yarn connecting each character.
Yeah, yeah. It's my neighborhood, just like schizo fucking crime scene chalkboard. It's like, all right, this person is this person's grandson, but he looks like he's kind of a fuck up, but he might show up when it's needed. You put that into Rolodex.
That's been one thing that's been kind of cool about having a kid is that like everybody in our neighborhood loves to just kind of like pull up beside us, we're walking around and just like chat with us and see how it's going and
Oh
all
yeah.
that. And it's huge, dude. It's like it's vital and people like that. Like babies make people happy.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I remember honestly, a point about this that's kind of maybe a little more nuanced and a less straightforward good, but just like important was like I was walking around the other day and like um and I'm just like fucking I this was actually kind of a chaotic day. I'm like home alone. I've got the dog and I've got my kid and she just won't go down for a fucking nap.
Mm.
And so, but I need to take the dog out or he's going to fucking shit all over the house. And so I'm like walking outside in like a loop around the neighborhood with like the baby monitor in my pocket. And for like half of the walk, I can get reception.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm walking around and like my neighbor stops me and she's talking to me, and it's like this really nice car. She's lovely. It's like this old Jewish hippie lady, and she's like, and she always walked around with this her husband, who looks like fucking like Jerry Garcia or something. They're really nice, and I'm talking to her, and she's like, yeah, my like husband died like just a couple days ago,
Oh
and I'm
man.
like, oh fuck, dude, what? And I'm fucking in the baby monitor's beeping because I'm just in a pocket that's outside of the reception, and
Oh
my
no.
dog's pulling me. And then my other neighbor walks up, and she's walking with a cane because she just like had a traumatic brain injury from a car accident, and she starts
Oh
walking
man.
up, and I'm just like, oh god. But like I've been interacting with all these people so much more and getting so much more invested
Mm-hmm.
that it's just this funny thing of I'm like, oh, I gotta go back, and I can't tell anybody that I've left my fucking child at
Yeah.
home alone because they're gonna be like, what the fuck are you doing? And my dog is just getting fucking mad at me and just like, dude, fuck you, dude. I want to go inside because he hates being outside, and like, and it was just funny, but it's so, and I'm not, it's tragedy, it's a tragedy, right? But it's also like such a wonderful gift
Mm-hmm.
to like have neighbors that I'm like engaged with enough to be
Yeah.
like, let's like talk about this loss that you have, or like I'm helping my neighbor with like her recovery, and like
Mm-hmm. And
checking in on her and stuff like that, and that's like, and it's kind of like I have too much going on that it's kind of fallen out of my arms there and spilling, but it's like this is like rewarding, this is so much,
definitely.
this is such a great problem to have as opposed to just like walking around and just like having people that just don't talk to me and just kind of not making eye contact.
Yeah, yeah, which is like kind of the de facto mode of existence, at least within a city or an urban area.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's also like you mentioned your neighbor who lost her husband and had that kind of sense of loss. It might would benefit her in a kind of deep way to see your baby and to see like new life and to see, growth and that kind of thing, in a way that would be like it might just be make her happy to be around you even and have that conversation where it's like this is someone who's bringing new life into the world and raising a new life and kid, and even that might give her a little bit of a breadth of hope or some sense of just vital energy kind of like injected back into her life a little bit.
Totally, 100%. Like it's not just all endings. It's
Yeah.
like there's growth, there's stuff being generated at the same time too. Here, real fast, let's pause just for
Cool.
half a second.
You know that band, I think they only had like one popular song, but they're called Live and they have a song called Lightning Crashes.
Uh-uh.
It's like lightning crashes, an old mother dies. That's
I think
it's
so.
like a
I think
it's like a turn of this like 2000s kind of era
I'm gonna look it up
alternative.
right now.
But anyways, it's basically the exact thing we were just talking about because it starts off. It's like lightning crashes, a new mother cries, her placenta falls to the floor, an angel opens her eyes, like talking about a baby. And then the next
Damn,
stanza
that's
is
graphic.
it is very much so graphic, yeah. But then the next stanza is lightning crashes, an old mother dies. And so it's just, the revolving door of life. One person dies, but there's also new life happening all the time.
When I see my neighbor again, I'm just like,
Play that.
no, I'm not even gonna play. I'm just gonna go, lightning crashes and an old mother died. And she's just gonna be like, what?
She's like, what is wrong with you, dude?
I'm like, dude, you don't know Live, you fucking bitch.
Yeah, I mean, pop sensation live with their hit song
Pop
Lightning
sensation,
Crashes.
pop a '90s alternative sensation. You fuck.
Uh, but I kept thinking about that, and now I Googled it, and I'm seeing an article here. The story behind Live's meditation on the circle of life, lightning crashes. So, yeah, very much so. That's what the message is there. It's, hey, something's in, but there's beautiful beginnings right around the corner happening nearly simultaneously. So,
Dude,
not
brother,
everything's bad.
out with the old, in with the new. You know what I'm saying?
You should tell her next time, hey, you gotta make room for the new
I
life,
was like,
dude.
out with the old, dude. It was his time. Get the fuck out of here.
It taking up space for my daughter.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, we got an overpopulation problem here. Get out of here.
This town ain't big enough for the two of us.
Yeah, yeah.
Like passing each other on the way, like the waiting room from heaven. One's going in, one's coming out. Like, see you, old man. But God bless her. God bless him and your beautiful
God,
baby.
yeah, praying for them and yeah, all of that. Dude, honestly, also, my baby is weirdly beautiful. It's like actually a little bit strange how fucking cute my kid is.
You know, I think that they all say that, but I will give you that there's something to it. I think you're onto something.
I think I'm honest. Well, no, that's like, it's like, of course, every fucking parent says that, but also, like, objectively speaking, I like look at this kid and I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, like that
You
came
know,
from
I'm
me.
like this kid. Yeah, no, what is
It's
this?
got to
What is
mostly
this?
be on her mother's side because I know that didn't come from me.
No, dude, if she looked like me, she'd be like a little fucking goblin.
Yeah,
No, dude, the
she
funny
comes
thing
to look
is
like Sam Hyde.
no, that's a throwback. Uh, the funny thing is everybody points out that she just looks like a little doppelganger of me, and like everyone's like, oh yeah, totally, except my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law just gets silent, and it's really funny because she acts like it makes her mad, and I like don't even understand. It's very funny. I have a great relationship with my mother-in-law,
That's
but
funny. It's like, no, this actually looks like my daughter's, not you.
yeah, no, it's like, yeah, it's like she's like territorial about it. She's like, no, like I don't want to share this child.
Yeah, you're
It's
stealing
funny.
beautiful baby valor.
Yeah, grandma is obsessed with the baby, but
I think that's the thing though. Like you were saying, people like are stopping more in your neighborhood to like just kind of slow down and like talk with you for a second when you have the baby out. And then
yeah,
you're saying that the grandma is like obsessed with the baby. Babies really do inject some sense of vital energy and like essence into whatever situation they're in because they're just like this bursting ball of new life and potential and everything like that. So
yeah,
older people can kind of feed off it or project anything onto the baby, like, oh well, my failures in life, maybe this baby will have, there's a lot that can be like there's a lot of meaning that comes out of the baby being around. And so I think it's kind of like that's like, everyone used to live together in villages, and then like everyone kind of raised like the village babies and stuff like that kind of together, and it kind of fed into like the health of the whole unit. And now we're more separated out. Even with families, it's like your kids don't live with you, and if they have kids, you only see your kid like, maybe on the weekends or whatever, if it's a grandkid, that kind of thing. And so I think people are kind of hungry for just being around that energy and that vital essence.
yeah. Well, I also think that is also kind of why I think some younger people are kind of like put off by babies. Is because I think that like babies are extremely powerful,
Mm.
and it's like this renewed. I mean, I'm totally responding in like a negative, pessimistic way right now, but like it's just like old ladies love babies for the same reason that certain young women like hate babies, which is that like it's this powerful insistence of life and
Yeah.
energy and like enthusiasm and just like getting invested in buying in and like getting skin in the game
Hmm.
and like striving for something bigger than yourself and all these big things and all the things that it represents. And you, if like if you're an old person and you're at the end of your life and you have done that kind of stuff, like then it's this nice wistful reminder of all the best parts,
Yeah.
right? And then if you're like a young person who's like currently fucking bilboing out and just refusing the call to adventure,
Mm.
it's sort
Bilbo
of like,
Baggins.
yeah, just yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that you like ask it as if it's like, no, like Bilbo, Bilbo, Bilbo Jackson,
Yeah. Yeah. This other
the lost
Bilbo.
member of the Jackson family. No,
He
like
just didn't
yeah,
want to
like
be one of the five.
yeah, yeah, exactly. No, he just wanted to stay in his hole and smoke pipe weed. Um,
Probably a good
and
decision, honestly, if you look at what else happened to those fucking kids.
yeah, exactly. He was afraid of his dad, and he was right to be. The Michael Jackson's dad, Sauron. Um, no, but like, no, whereas like I think, I mean, there's a lot of things like this, right? Where it's like if you're like fucking up and you're like not living to your best potential, when you see other people doing that, um, it like it like makes you reminded of like the things you're not doing, you
Yeah,
know?
people get bitter.
Yeah, people get bitter about it. I think about like yeah, yeah. So anyways, yeah, it's they're powerful, man. They're fucking powerful.
Mm.
I've actually been honestly one of the points that we talked about certain topics, and this is kind of the one of them that I'm kind of that I think is connected is I have been getting a little bit paranoid about my smoking.
Parentoid.
Parentoid. Yeah, I'm a parentoid now. No, I've been getting a little parentoid about smoking. And like I don't actually like worry as much as I think a lot of people do. Like I smoke a little bit of weed, I wash my hands, and I take
Mm.
care of my kid,
Yeah.
right? But I'm thinking about it and it's like, like smoking is harsh regardless of if it's cigarettes or weed or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like it like hurts my throat a little bit. It like
Mm.
gives me a little bit of acid reflux. Like it's just kind of nasty.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stay with my brother and he mentioned to me that his wife is aware that I smoke weed and she's just like not super looking forward to me potentially smoking at their place.
Mm.
Um, and I was like, you know what? I like appreciate you bringing that up. I'm gonna use this as an opportunity to pivot a little bit and to try doing like edibles for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
And, and I don't even know if I'll get high when I'm out of town, but like I usually do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll just plan on doing that if I do. And yeah, I've just been thinking about that lately, and that was kind of my topic that I had texted you about was like preferred ways of ingesting
Mm.
the ganja. Because I remember last time we talked to Sai, he was like, "Yeah, fucking COVID made it so that I don't really like smoking anymore," and
Yeah.
he just does edibles. And I don't think I'm one of these people who like really gets fucked up by edibles. Like I know it's like it's fundamentally different.
Yeah.
It plays with your body differently, and I just don't really know that I have like the hormonal chemical makeup to make it so that that really fucking sends me to Narnia or anything. Like I think
Yeah.
edibles are fine. And so yeah, I was thinking about like, I mean, not to ramble here, but just I get these really fucking cheap like ounces of weed now that are like, I don't know. I mean, this is probably so boring for people to listen to, so keep it short. But dude, it's like I go through it. It takes me like probably 3 months to smoke a whole one of these,
Mm-hmm.
and I might be overstating it. I mean, I smoke a lot of weed, but it takes me a while to smoke it, and I get it for like $30 now at these stores. It's fucking crazy.
That's solid.
And so yeah, and so I'm not gonna do this dumb shit like they do with pre rolls, where it's like you just get the shit pre made and it's like marked up 1,000%. Like
Oh yeah.
I'm not gonna go and buy their gay ass little gummies that probably have horrible shit in it. I'm just gonna make my own can of butter. I think, which I've never
Mm-hmm.
done,
I do it all the
and
time.
you do it all the time. Okay, so
Yeah.
you're the person to talk to, and just been thinking about like I don't know, man, like just like bulletproof coffee, just like pop it in my
Mm-hmm.
coffee in the morning, like put it
Yeah.
on a bagel, like I don't even think I want to cook with it necessarily. Like I think just literally having the butter is like
Mm-hmm.
probably a good way to go, or like coconut oil.
Coconut oil is a big one for me. Yeah, I do coconut oil a lot of the time. Um, a
Can
lot of
you
the time,
apply it topically and have it work at all?
ooh, I haven't ever tried, but I assume you probably can. Because I think that like, and I don't know that you would even need to cook it for it to work that way. I'm not sure how it works topically, but I know that like the cooking it is just heating it up so it gets like essentially like chemically made to where when you digest it, it'll actually affect you.
Yeah,
It
it's like it activates.
decarboxylates it. Yeah, yeah. So like activates it to make it so that like when you do digest it, it works right. But if you're not digesting it, if you're applying it topically, I don't know that you need to cook it, but you might
Mhm.
still need to. I'm not sure. But the coconut oil is a nice thing because you can kind of like portion it out onto things that it's not as fattening as butter and it's not as like rich as butter.
Mhm.
So you can put it into stuff that's not as um, I don't know exactly how to put it, but savory maybe as you might would want to use for a butter. So I like doing that. I also I like to make the weed butter and then just keep the butter around. I'll put it on toast or in pasta to butter noodles or whatever. Um,
Hell yeah.
but you can also use it and like make it into like chocolate and then like I like to do it around espresso beans and like let it harden and then you just eat like one or two of those in the morning. It's kind of like a morning pick me up kind of
Damn, dude,
situation.
you got like a whole kitchen going on with this shit.
I try to cook a lot and bake a lot on my own because a it gives me something to fill my time and do that's like constructive and it's not like going out and spending money. I mean, I'm spending
Yeah.
money, but it's not going to the bar and wasting money and time there. It's instead I'm like cooking something and using my creative mind in that way.
Well, and
So
then
I
realistically, you're saving a lot of money by
yeah.
cooking.
So I've tried to like up my game, and plus I watch like it's like one of my guilty pleasures is I like to watch like Gordon Ramsay Next Level Chef. It's like a cooking competition that comes on Fox, just your local channel. And so I watch that and I get fired up. I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna try to cook something good too. Or I'll watch the Great British Bakers sometimes, and I'll be like, man, I gotta cook some fire pastry right now. But anyways, so yeah, I try to up my cooking around like the house and stuff to keep it interesting and keep myself engaged in the process. And so it's nice to like you can make anything an edible basically. Like I made lasagna with weed butter in it the other day. You can do kind of anything. I like to do cornbread with it, or biscuits in the morning, that kind of thing. So it's nice to have just around, and then you don't have to always use it, but you can just be like, oh, I'm gonna lather it on this morning. Maybe do a little bit extra.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. And like, I wonder if there's like um a way of infusing it to something that like also like just doesn't really have like calories. Like I know that you
Yeah.
need fat, and so that's probably difficult. But
You
like I
can do it
wonder
with
if
a simple sugar, but that's still, or a simple syrup, I mean, but that still has a level of obviously sugar and calories from that fat.
yeah, I don't think like yeah, interesting. I think I'm just gonna do that. I think that that's like I think that's gonna be a nice little experiment. I guess the topic I was gonna kind of get to is just like what's your preferred method of administration?
I think I like smoking weed the most, but that's mostly just because now that I've done it for a while, I think I've developed some level of like an oral fixation or something where I do like to have like the act of smoking. And I also like it like in a social level where it's like, okay, I have a couple friends over. Now I can twist a blunt. I'm spending the time doing that. It gives me something to kind of fidget with in some capacity or like to work towards. And then like you have a thing that you're all kind of sharing in, you're passing it around or whatever. So I like that. I mean, there are also some hygienic concerns with that like I don't share with strangers and that kind of thing. I don't just like smoke a blunt at a concert or whatever with who knows whose lips have been on it. But I
Right.
do like it with like, a close group of friends or whatever. Um and I like that it's more immediate when you smoke weed, but at the same time I have been moving towards more edibles and less smoking because of the same reasons that you've listed. Like I realized that if I smoke a few bowls in a row or whatever, my throat kind of hurts a bit. Um, if I like spit afterwards, I'll see like, oh, I have like a little bit discolored, like brown tinge in it. It's probably not healthy to like inhale
Well, and that's like
burning
big blunt
material.
territory
Right. Yeah, for
is like
sure
straight up
that.
having like resin spit, dude, is
Yeah.
definitely a
And
thing.
I have definitely I like brush my teeth and cut down on that, and that's not always the case, but that's something where I'm like, "Oh, maybe I stopped doing this quite so much."
Yep.
But I still like it. Like it's just like a I think like I think it's okay to have a few crutches here and there. That's like I know people who are grown people that like to smoke a cigar every now and again, and so it's like I like to smoke a blunt. That's kind of my thing. But I do like I take edibles before work, or I'll use like a tincture before work. That's like primarily a CBD mix, and it'll be mostly CBD and a small amount of THC. And I like to do that because it kind of, for me, I work a physical labor job, and so it keeps the muscles loose and like makes it so I'm less aware of any strain I'm putting on my body, and that's
Sure.
usually helpful when you're outside moving rocks around and shit.
The thing for me is like, and again, I've said this in the past, like I don't need it, right? I'm very reasonable about it. But it is just kind of one of those things of like, especially in nap time era, right? All right, baby's got to go down for a nap. Well, baby gets laid down in her bassinet and is looking at me and laughing and smiling and whipping around, and she's like playtime,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, oh man, the thing is like dad doesn't want to fucking hang out with the baby. Dad wants to do his own thing. And if you just like get a little stoned, it can, when you're in that headspace, it can really just help kind of like reset your perspective and just be
Yeah.
like, literally, this is like, it just gives you baby brain sometimes, right? And
Yeah,
it's
for
literally just
real.
like, yeah, I just want to sit here, stare at this baby, and just play with her. And because a lot of the time it is just like you need to, man, what is it? It's this stuff can be, baby stuff can be fucking torturous with anything. It's the point I'm gonna make really is just you know, a watched kettle never boils,
Yeah.
right? But like that in the context of like raising a baby is fucking torturous, right? Like, okay, I'm excited to go to sleep. I'm gonna go to sleep just the second I put the baby down, and that should only take 5 minutes. Here we go. And it's like, dude, I mean, sometimes putting the baby down takes a fucking hour,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Sometimes putting the baby down takes 2 hours, right? Sometimes the baby just doesn't go down.
Hmm.
And if like every step of the way, you're just like, oh my gosh, like I'm just in a rush to be done with this so that I can get to the next thing I want to do. Kind of like when you're like at a you're closing up, uh, you know, like working retail or something. Like it's like closing time and you've worked a long shift and you just like close the shop up in like 5 minutes
Yeah.
kind of thing. You're just like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. It's just it's torture. It's torture. But weed kind of helps kind of like, I don't know, kind of stretch time out a little bit.
Hmm.
And it kind of it can help reset your focus on time.
And it can give
Um,
you a little bit more patience in general too, because you're like, it maybe can slow down some of that mechanism in your brain that's like, gotta rush, gotta be fast, gotta get to the next thing.
that's honestly, that's probably the best way to put it is just the patience thing.
Yeah.
Um, so
The
yeah,
retail example you gave is actually pretty like, that's something that I can understand well. Like, I don't have kids, obviously, so I don't really know how it works within the scope of parenting. But I know, like, when I worked in for instance, a fast food restaurant, you start pre closing like an hour before you close. And if no one's coming in, you can pre close and get everything done to where, like, at the very minute you're supposed to close, you can lock the door and then you just have a couple more tasks and then you're kind of out of there. But if people keep showing up, right before close, it basically undoes like the process of the pre-closing that you've done all, the whole hour leading up to that. So you get frustrated and you're like, oh shit, now
yes,
I gotta do this again. I'm gonna be here closing for longer now and it's gonna take forever. But that's something I learned when I was in high school working a job like that. I'd smoke weed and then I'd be like, fucking all right, there's one more customer. It is what it is. We'll get through it. It gives you a little bit more of patience and kind of detachment in that kind of respect.
yeah. It's interesting. Pre-closing was always such a slippery slope for me, because it is just like specifically. I remember bar backing, and it's like, all right, I'm like serving front of house, I'm running food, and I'm also like doing dishes in the dish pit. And the dish pit was always the big one where it's like, all right, I'm gonna pre-close. I'm gonna like get the dish pit ready to shut down for the night.
Yeah.
And then because it's a fucking bar, it's like, no, you like always need food available, right? If
Hmm.
you're serving alcohol, you need to be serving food, right?
Yeah.
Because just regulation in our state. And so then like someone orders food, and not only do they order food, but they like order that one thing that like comes in a ramekin that
Yeah.
like cakes onto it, right? And so you're like, okay, cool. So I have like one dish, right? And it's going to take me as long as like a full rack of plates would, because I like need to soak it,
Hmm.
and I need to like re-soap the whole fucking sink to have a soaking
Yeah.
sink,
Yeah.
and refill the bleach sink and all this shit. And like if a fucking health inspector comes in right now, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where it's just like, man, like you're like not even gaining any time. It's really just like a lot of the time the pre-close stuff, I mean, it's obviously it helps in some ways, but there's like a really clear line a lot of the time where it's just like if you go past a certain point of pre-closing, you're actually just like emotionally
Yeah. Yeah.
comforting yourself,
Definitely.
by just
It's
being like,
purely psychological.
it's purely psychological, because it's
Yeah.
just like, no, like dude, just like once the door is closed, shut the dish pit down then,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it doesn't take long. You just like being out in the front of house being like, yeah, I'm just hanging out now, dude, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
wash a single dish. And it's like, no, dude, like some dumb faggot's gonna come in and like order something,
Mm.
and then you're gonna and he's completely fine doing that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he's done nothing wrong. This always reminds me of like God, what's the? I'm sure I've said this joke before, but it's like if you've never worked service industry or retail and you want to know what it's like, just imagine there's a race of people called customers, and now imagine you're just a tremendous racist.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely.
and that's just what it is. Like, honestly, that's one of the biggest reasons why getting out of the service industry and retail, I consider them different, but I'm sure a lot of people consider them the same.
They're definitely different,
Um,
but they have overlap in a way that like a lot of other industries don't with either of those.
Dude, food service is just a more right wing retail, sort of,
That's so true.
full,
Yeah,
full of
definitely.
full of substance abuse.
It's a little bit more
Um,
male coded, I feel like, than retail.
oh yeah. Um, um, One of the biggest reasons to get out of that is just the misanthropy. Like it makes you
Hmm.
not like people.
Absolutely.
And I remember working in a bar. Like the only time I ever had out in like the world was late at night
Hmm.
or basically like on my day off when I would get up at like noon.
Yeah.
And so again, most of that time would be like late at night. Um, and so it was just really, I became a vampire. And then you become a vampire, and then people are just like obstacles around you.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's just like, this fucking sucks. And I remember just some of the conversations I would have with my coworkers where people get like really specific about tip cultures,
Oh my
particularly bad.
god, yeah.
People get mad about
That's
tip
where
culture.
real racism comes into the picture too.
Oh, for sure. And I remember I remember just some of the dumb conversations with coworkers of like, there was like and I get it. There was like a fruit fly in somebody's beer that they ordered.
Hmm.
And this guy was like, hey, like, it's a fucking fly in my beer, dude.
Yeah, what the
And,
fuck is that about?
and my coworker was like, are you fucking serious, dude? Like, okay. And they like dumped it out being all fucking moody. And like poured him a new one. And it's like, so if I like poured a beer at home and a fruit fly got in it, I'd be like, that like doesn't matter at all.
Yeah,
Like
you
I can
take
just
it
take it
out.
out. Yeah. Um, but right, there's like a social ritual to going and dining out.
Definitely.
And like, yes, like you can't have a fruit fly, and it totally makes sense that a fruit fly would get into stuff in a fucking bar.
Yeah.
But like you gotta kind of, and to be honest, I like, there's probably a lot of people that would disagree with this, but like, no, like you pour the guy a new beer,
I
right?
mean, of course you do.
Um,
If you disagree with that, you're fucking lost in the matrix or something, dude. If you disagree with you give a customer a new beer, it takes you 3 seconds. You lose almost zero like capital through doing it as well. Just pour the new beer. And like if
well,
you
that's
buy
not necessarily
something,
true because the margins can be tight on kegs.
okay,
And so just dumping 16 ounces can be, but I mean the bartender's not gonna fucking see that because they're not the fucking owner.
right. And
But
also, if you
well,
buy something in a restaurant, there is an expectation that you're going to get it, with a certain level of hygienic standards. And I'm not saying that a fly is necessarily not hygienic, but it's not the welcome sight you want to see when you purchase something. And so, yeah, I
no,
mean,
100%, 100%. I will say in the defense of the person who was minimizing it, it's like, dude, especially like I have to imagine like, dude, get like a fucking balmy like dive bar in like something like Florida or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
And it's like, dude, I bet you like a third of those well bottles have like a little fucking fruit fly graveyard in the bottom of them, right?
definitely.
And it is genuinely hard to prevent that from happening. It's not actually hurting anybody. And so there's a certain level of that, but it's also just like, I fucking shit out of my ass and wipe the poop with a piece of paper. I like don't tell a person on the first date that I do that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I don't like, we hide certain things.
Hmm.
And if I have shit on my hand, I'm not just gonna be like, well, what do you think? I was wiping it. Like, of course, you get shit on your hand sometimes. It's like, no, get this shit off your hand,
It's like,
dude.
go
So
wash it off and act like you don't do that. What the fuck?
yeah, and this is my whole takeaway of the story, which is just like, people get so acclimated to in the service industry, they get so acclimated to just being psychotic
Yeah, definitely.
that it will just be like, I'm going to argue about this fruit fly, and like I'm going to argue that like anyone that leaves less than 20% is like a fucking horrible person. Whereas like
Hmm.
I've come around now, like I'm so, I mean, 20% is easier for me to do because it's just easier math, but like 15%, the boomer 15% is like, dude, yeah, like I don't, you shouldn't even be getting tipped anyways. And also,
Yeah.
like, the guy at fucking PetSmart expects me to fucking tip him now.
Yeah,
So, like,
yeah.
I'm sorry if everyone's getting tipped, and I don't fucking tip those people. But the fact that it's become so ubiquitous, I just tip less in general,
Oh yeah,
right?
but that's the thing, dude. Like, I'll sometimes run like delivery orders on the side, like gig economy shit. Like, if I need to make a little bit extra money, if I didn't work as many shifts because of the weather or whatever. And
Hmm.
the trend is definitely that tips have gone down, and I think A, it's an economic thing, but I think B, it's like people are now so used to having to tip at every single location and all these different intervals that they're like, all right, I'm just going to tip lower and lower now. And it's like, I think that there is some level of that. And also, it's like if I go to a coffee shop and someone rings up my bagel that I get out of the fucking thing, should I have to tip that person as much as I tip an actual waiter? It's like that they should be maybe just being paid a living wage. And I get that they're not. And so then, the responsibility of that gets shifted off into the consumers, and it's all this like shady shit that businesses do in order to keep their bottom line down. And so like I'll play along because I also don't want them to go home without any money. And I've worked a tipped job, so I get it. But at the same time, it's like I don't know. I'll get at a retail place. They'll turn around the little touchscreen fucking thing, and they'll be like, what percentage do you want to tip this person? I'm like, they're a fucking retail. Like they're selling me something over a counter. I'm tipping zero. Why unless they like went above and beyond, then I would maybe tip them without any prompting or whatever. But like there's no I think that people get so used to just like I'm going to just deny this tip because it's like why are they getting tipped, that there's some level that it's come down. And there is like a culture that's changed where people are thinking tipping is kind like you look at Europe and stuff, they don't do it. And we know that over here now. So we're like, what are we tipping for? Why don't these businesses just pay their employees correctly? But you still have to an extent. And so like, I don't know, it's a weird thing. You get people who are like server like industry people who think that if you don't tip 20, they just deserve 20% tip all the time just because they're there. And then they'll do a shitty job and then get mad if they don't get it. And it's like, yeah, that's bullshit. Like,
Dude, here's the thing. Here's the thing also with that too, though, is like people in service industry is a gooey term, right? Like baristas, totally different job, right?
yeah.
And people kind of act like it's the same. But like a bartender and a server, I'm talking like restaurants, right?
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Let's be like totally fucking clear. And like all front of house people know what the fuck I'm talking about, and no one ever likes to fucking address it because it's because everything short of criticizing billionaires is just considered punching down, and no one
Yeah,
likes
yeah.
it. I'm sorry, dude. The guy working front of house who like who like for a third of the week can just spend like half of his shift just like standing next to the hostess that he wants to fuck and like talking and yapping, makes like 5 times as much as the line cook who's like
Hmm.
sprinting for 12 fucking hours,
Right.
dude, who doesn't get any fucking tips, dude. Fucking servers who are fucking retards that walk away with like $500, dude. You can walk away with a hell of a lot more than $500 at the end of the night, dude.
Especially if
And
you're a bartender and you're getting like high volume or something like that.
yeah, and like, and dude, and I want to say, like, I'm not. It's not an easy job. It's not necessarily a hard job. It's just like it's busy sometimes,
Yeah.
and I mean, I guess it can be demanding, right?
Hmm.
But like, you know what's a fucking hard job? Being a fucking line cook. And those
Yeah.
people make so much less than the front of house. And anytime I've ever seen a joint that's been like, we're going to share tips with front of house like beyond like the bullshit minimum overtures that most places do, where it's like, oh, they make, you know, 5% or some bullshit that a lot of places do. Like, no, it's like you're going to actually split the tips. Front of house does nothing but bitch the
Oh
whole
yeah.
time. time. And
100%.
it's just like, dude, like those cooks are back there working under someone who's like authentically mentally ill,
Yeah,
and they're burning
definitely.
their fucking hands. They're fucking working with crackheads. It's constant. They're screaming like, dude, it's fucking bullshit. And
Yeah.
this whole thing people go where they're like, dude, fucking being a server, man, like, dude, you gotta tip 20%. And everyone tries to act like every fucking serving job is like some lady in the deep south working at a Waffle House where
Yeah.
she makes $2 an hour or something, when it's like, no, dude, you're in Seattle, you're making fucking $25 an hour now. In
Mhm.
certain parts of the city you're making $25 an hour, and you're making fucking tips. Go fuck yourself, dude.
Yeah.
Fuck you. And that's the whole thing, is that they just like don't want to admit that. And everyone fucking knows, who's worked in the service industry, it's totally unfair. The cooks get completely fucked. And I say this as someone who like would never be caught dead working back of house, because like I'm not a hard enough worker, I'm not
Yeah,
a good
yeah.
enough employee to be a cook. I'm a fucking piece of shit who's front of house because I can just schmooze people.
Right, yeah, yeah. That's one thing that, like, you learn. There's, like, there's a, delineation of power, or there's a struggle that happens within any service job, like, any restaurant job, where there's, like, the front of house versus the back of house, and that's for
Yep.
sure a thing. And there's, like, this kinda culture that forms amongst it, where the people in the back of house are resentful of the people in the front of house, but then the people in the front of house kinda look down and also are resentful of the people in back of house, because then they'll blame them on, like, orders that are not right or whatever, or if the food takes a little bit too long, then they'll get mad because their tip might be lowered. There's, like, this huge back and forth that puts them at odds that I
Shit rolls downhill.
yeah.
Yeah,
Man.
no, it's total bullshit. And again, the thing about front of house too is that then they get all of like the old regulars who come
Mm.
in, who become like their little fucking
Pay pigs.
yeah, they become their like little pay pig like fan club.
Yeah.
And then like back of house is just like
Slaving
the
away.
like well, yeah, they're just like the strung out schizoids sitting
Yeah.
behind the restaurant smoking a cigarette on a milk crate,
Yeah.
while the servers are like, oh, I work so hard, as they're just like standing behind the bar having people fawn over them. And it's just like, dude, fuck you. Like
Yeah.
you're making like 10 times more than the cooks, and like just having your dick sucked the entire time. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
anyways, I actually I it's I worked in it long enough to where I have like a nuanced enough opinion to where I'm not like tear the whole thing down. It's like, it's just, it is what it is, but it's also
Mhm.
just like, if we're gonna be honest about it, like, it's all bullshit, dude. It's all
Yeah.
complete bullshit.
Yeah, and it's very much so, like, you're not supposed to hire people based on, appearances or anything like that, but front of house, back of house is very much so dependent upon how people look and are maintained and act, like, in a lot of ways. Like,
Yeah,
I was told, like, I went out for a job, when I was working at the ski resort, and I got a job doing, like, kind of attendant, like, back of house towel kind of stuff at a spa, just, like, getting shit ready and, like, laundry and whatever. And then I was told, I was like, oh, you have like a front of house face and personality. So like then
yeah.
I ended up doing that instead, which is like it worked out positively for me, and I got a little bit smoozier job and made a little bit more money and stuff because of it. But it's for sure a thing. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. Like, I don't think you should have to hire fucking gremlins to sit at a concierge desk of a spa. Of course that's not a welcoming kind of thing you want to have right at the front door.
No, we don't
So
need to. But yeah, we don't need to. We don't need to address it like legislatively or anything
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. But it is just one of those things where it's baked into the cake. Where it's just like, yeah, I mean, it is unfair. Like, it is fucking bullshit.
Yeah. And
Um,
that creates
and
just
again,
more of that divide for sure.
yeah, it sucks. It sucks.
It's like
So yeah, there's that.
Snowpiercer train in every single service restaurant.
Yeah, no, every restaurant is just a mini Snowpiercer. I have no idea how we got down this fucking rabbit hole.
I don't either.
Um,
We got other
you
topics
know what?
though.
But you know what it kind of reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of anyone I know who's ever lived in LA. I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
Ooh,
Anyone
pivot.
I've ever known that lived in LA usually did some kind of like catering.
Mm.
And catering in LA is profoundly, it's, dude, we're just gonna say that's the most Snowpiercer train of
Oh,
all.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I've known a family member of mine did it, and it's like they would like go to parties with where there's just a bunch of actors just
Mm.
basically just like just shitting on the caterers and the
Or
servers
Gavin
and stuff like
Newsom just, like, having you stick your hand out through a bush to serve people or whatever the fuck that was.
that.
Yeah, politicians
um,
looking down on you for not wearing a mask or whatever.
and this is yet another reason why a lot of people, and I'm not one of these people, but I can understand why a lot of people see what's going on with this Palisades fire right now
Mm.
and kind of just have like a, yeah, well, fuck you.
Yeah.
Um, I will say, I mean, I don't think it's funny, or anything like that, but I will say, dude, looking at some of these fucking pictures and videos of like what's going on down there,
Mm.
it does have kind of like a Sodom and Gomorrah kind of
Oh,
quality
yeah.
to it,
Oh,
where you're
yeah.
like, dude, this is like the fucking wrath of God right
Yeah.
now.
And that's, like,
And
the
it is,
obvious joke too, like, that's, like the first meme I saw was just, like it was, like, when God keeps sending you plagues, but you keep living in fucking sin or whatever, and it's like,
right.
yeah, I mean, that's obviously the joke and the takeaway here, it's like, this is a fucking bastion of, like, all the worst things that are the problem of Western culture, and they create it here, and then they just put it on full display and live unabashed lives of hedonism. And then, yeah, you're gonna burn on fire because you're living in a place that catches on fire all the fucking time. But that's not the thoughtful or the compassionate take to have. But that is like an easy knee jerk reaction to it, for sure. But before we fully move on to the fires, you were talking about catering in LA. Have you ever seen the show Party Down?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like
Party
the
Down's, it's been years since I saw it, but I remember really liking Party
Yeah,
Down.
Party Down rules, dude. That's one of my favorite, like, sitcom kind of mid-2000s sitcoms. But that's the thing,
Hmm.
it's like they're the catering crew, but all of them are, failed actors or aspiring actors or aspiring writers or whatever. So I feel like that's kind of like in LA, you either are a part of that, kind of media manufacturing machine, or you're on the outside looking in with aspirations of one day being in that. So there's like this stark divide where you have people who have actually broken through or are making it at a successful level in movies, and then you have people who are like holding on to a dream and working these service industry type jobs. I think those are like really the only economies that exist within LA, really.
Yeah, yeah. No, well, 100%. The like LA. The last time I went there, I remember just being reminded of like how much just that like dark, cursed, mysterious magic of like Blue Velvet, or
Yeah,
sorry, Mulholland Drive,
Mulholland Drive.
is
Yeah, yeah.
there. Where there is like a, LA is a scab,
Mm-hmm.
and like underneath it is just so much pus
Mm,
and like darkness,
mm,
and it's so ostentatious while simultaneously being so fucking dirty and grimy and ugly and like utilitarian in so many ways.
yeah.
And you just drive and I know like all American cities are like this to a certain extent, but there's something about, I think it might just be like the Californian aesthetic of that rich look, because like in, at least like in Seattle, right, we're like the home of like athleisure, like
Yeah.
business casual, like the rich people are going around with like North Face jackets and like sweatpants,
Yeah, and hiking
and like they
shoes
don't,
on or something.
yeah, whereas like see it, and maybe that makes it more dramatic to me to like go to California and see like, no, like rich people are like wearing brands that just specifically signal that they're
Mm.
rich
It's
as
much
the
more
function.
performative there, like for sure.
Yeah, it's like an honor culture kind of thing or something.
Hmm.
And then yeah, and then there's just tons of just fucking Mexican peasants and homeless people,
Yeah.
and it's fucking crazy, and I fucking hate it. And so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at this fire, and
It's wild.
I don't know. Well, it is wild, and I mean, one thing we've been talking about, and one thing we're going to keep talking about is just the vibe shift, just the
Mm.
widespread vibe shift. And in the past, this is what I was saying to my buddies the other night. It's like, all right, so libs are just spinning this thing up to just be about climate change. And
Mm,
to be completely fair, like I don't really care enough to like be a climate change denier. Like I'm willing to acknowledge that we're fucking up the environment in some macro way because like of course we are.
yeah,
That seems pretty obvious. I don't like the eschatology of it. And like I like environmentalism. I don't like
climate
whatever the fuck.
science. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't like whatever the fuck like climate activism is,
God.
right?
I just
Because
read
it's
this
it's
book by the guy that wrote Jurassic Park, Michael Crichton, and it was a
yeah,
recommendation from the Rare
yes,
Candy guys.
of
And
course it is. Yeah,
it's called State of Fear, and it's very much so about like this dichotomy between like actual environmentalism and local environmental causes versus the abstraction of climate change, and how the abstraction of
yes,
climate change can serve certain ideological goals and material interests, whereas like it also distracts from doing environmental, like local level environmental issue work. And so instead of worrying about the fact that like increasing urban areas and land use increases heat at a local level, they're like taking the numbers of that and they're like, oh, well, that's extrapolated out into the entire climate must be getting hotter. And so we should focus on like CO2 in the atmosphere rather than like whatever's this, forever expanding city kind of life that's like taking away all the natural beauty around it and all these kind of things. So that has been heavily on my mind because I just finished the book recently. It's a long ass book, but it dovetails so nicely into this thing because the they have like a environmental fundraising advocacy group basically, and they're trying to coined this new phrase, abrupt climate change. And so they kind of bring this new phrase, abrupt climate change, out of nowhere, where, no longer are they talking about gradual things, but now they can tie any specific weather event into evidence for abrupt climate change. So if there is a fire in a place that has fires all the fucking time, they can say, oh, well, this fire is obviously evidence of abrupt climate change. And then you can't deny it because the fire's happening. And, if you, and so by the time you actually do all the science and stuff and you look through everything to say, well, no, I can prove that this fire just happens here all the time. And, that's just kind of what happens here. By then, it's like you've already kind of lost because the framing's already been in place. So, anyways, it dovetails so nicely with this. And it makes me think so much about. I've been thinking about the climate change so much. I've been thinking about it as it relates to Hurricane Helene that happened in like North Carolina and South Carolina and caused all the issues in Tennessee and that area. And then I'm thinking about it now in relation to here because like hurricanes happen all the time. Fires in this area happen all the time. And, and they're not good. Natural disasters are like they cause loss of life, loss of property, etc. But they are something that happen all the time. And, you know, it's difficult. There's almost nearly impossible to actually link any given disaster to a climate trend because it's weather and it's not climate. And so it's
mhm.
just like when I saw the fires, and immediately in the back of my mind, I'm like, all right, everyone's gonna be saying this is obviously evidence of climate change, blah blah blah. But like, I mean, also fucking California burns all the time. There's plants there that have to have fire in order to propagate and spread their seeds, and we do a lot of fire management that stops natural fires from happening. So like, whenever one is maybe man-made accidentally or whatever, of course it's going to spread like wildfire. I mean, no pun or whatever. It is literally a wildfire. Um, but yeah, I mean that was one thing. I don't know, and I can't sit here and explain away 100% that it's not related to climate. Maybe there was drier air or whatever, at the time, and I don't know for sure. But I don't like this immediate jump from everyone that's like, oh yes, like this is just like people almost get excited about the horrible events that are happening weather-wise because it proves their assumptions that they hold about climate change. It's like, well, y'all
That's
gonna need to listen to me now because look at all these people's homes are underwater, and you're like,
this is 100. That's totally a true thing, and it's and I know it's true because I feel it in myself about other stuff, right?
mm-hmm,
Where it's like the big one is this is a I don't want this to be too long of an aside, but this is a really fresh one. Last night we just learned um, that something, I mean, maybe I'll go into detail, but I'll just start vaguely. Basically, something like really bad happened to medically to someone we know.
Hmm.
And this person had basically gotten into like a was kind of like the person who in our friend group had it was the person who had like the big argument against one of our friends about the COVID vaccine.
Mm.
And something like really fucking bad just happened. And it like kind of quacks like a duck, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And there's like a part of my brain that's like it's like a really dark thing. It has to do with a pregnancy.
Mm.
And
Mm.
and it's horrible. And it like just cast a shadow over the whole night once my friends told me about this. And we're like praying for him, and it's a fucking nightmare. And but there's like that part of me that, and it's okay, like you're not, don't judge yourself over this stuff, like you have crazy shit, right,
Yeah.
like that goes through your head. But there is like a part of my brain, the undisciplined part of my brain,
Hmm.
that's like kind of glad, because now it's like I was right. I
Right.
was right, they were wrong. I
Yeah.
was right, they were wrong. They paid for it. Look at the results now,
Mm.
and look at you know and it's fucking and again it's okay, right,
Yeah,
like
it's
it's okay to have
natural, but it's
passion.
kind of disgusting. Yeah, yeah, at the same
Well, no,
time.
and again it's about being a fucking human being and
Hmm.
going like, well, I need to like apply will
Yeah,
and
yeah.
discipline to myself to be like, well, like it's good to say that that's not, just because it is a thought doesn't mean that it's a valuable thought.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean it
um
needs to be acted upon or worked into your actual worldview or anything like that.
exactly, and a lot of people don't think go that far with it, and honestly, especially when the mainstream encourages them to just not question that instinct at
Mm.
all, right?
Dude, one of my
um
friends today, and this is someone I really care about. I'm not going to make it a whole aside for sure, but this is a really close friend of mine, one of the first people I met when I moved here. And we
mhm.
have different politics and some different foundational beliefs, but they're one of the classical liberals that's like prides himself on having any conversation with anyone and not, what I mean? Like they're not like thought police or anything, but we do have differences of opinions in a major way. Well, anyways, today we got into it and they're trying to tell me that like they're one of these people who don't believe in free will. They're like, world is kind of like mechanistic in a way and this and that and the other. And so I'm sitting there thinking right now in this situation, we're like, oh, I had this idea pop into my head, but it's like obviously that's an irrational and kind of like not a
Wait, repeat
pro-social.
that. You cut out for just a moment.
I was thinking, I told you I have a friend who he doesn't really believe fully in like free will and stuff.
Yes.
And so when you just mentioned this situation where you had this idea that popped into your head and you're like, this is not really a healthy socially thing, even though it's natural for me to feel and to pop into my head. It's like you decide to, put it within a framework of your own self will and rationality and stuff. And you decide that's not a healthy thing to act upon or to give attention or whatever. Um, Whereas you're saying that some people are just trained not to actually think about that in a critical sense. And if you don't believe you have a free will, which is I guess kind of a maybe an operating system for most people in our western society, this mechanistic kind of materialism we live in, then
Hmm.
there's no reason to take that into some sort of qualitative judgment where you're like, actually that's not a good thing to think about this person, I shouldn't act upon it. There's no reason not to just let that thought fester and build forever. And so like it just reminded me of that conversation. I got worked up again, but you have to have some sense of, like you're saying, you have to have some sense of like a personal will and worldview and reason and rationality that you filter these different thoughts and stuff that pop into your head, because you're not just your thoughts, you're not just whatever pops in your head. You have the ability to filter them out and act in certain ways. And so you being like
Yep.
a good person in your heart and someone who's like wanting to be there for your friend, you don't immediately, you know, dunk on them because oh they had a casualty or an issue now as a result of whatever kind of medical beliefs they hold, and how stupid are they and they need to know it. It's like no, you need to show them compassion and grace and stuff like that, and maybe keep that to yourself and maybe try to work on making sure that doesn't keep popping up or whatever.
The
um
the only like selfish thought you should be having in that moment is basically just like, how can I conquer these petty
Yeah.
instincts that I'm having so that I can become so I can grow in my moral fortitude as an
Right.
individual and be better and like more ethical. It's not like if you're thinking, if like, especially in a situation like this where it's like a mistake was, and I do personally think that it is connected with the vaccine, right?
Hmm.
Um and I can like, I'm happy to give you more details like off air. I'm not going to talk about it on a
Yeah.
recording, but
I
basically just
can
like in a
infer.
situation like, yeah, well, we all know all the stuff already, right? It's just like in a situation like that, and especially like it's a fucking child. It's a fucking child we're talking about. Um, that's evil, you
Right.
know,
Right.
and it's pretty straightforward. It is pretty straightforward, and I don't know, like there are people in LA who are probably climate change denying chuds
Hmm.
whose fucking kids died or
Hmm.
something, you know? Are you gonna fucking dunk on them and fucking say that they deserved it? A lot of people
Right.
probably are. And it's just like, no, like you're like succumbing to evil right now.
Or
And so
am I gonna
anyways,
dunk on the satanic pedophile elite that all live in LA now that their houses are burning down and say that they deserve it? Man, I feel like I might should, but I'm not going to, you know?
yeah, exactly. I'm gonna well, that is a challenge. That's a challenging one to be honest.
Takes all of my will.
Um yeah, man, that is a tough one. You know, I'm just gonna say God's sorting it out.
Yeah, in
Um,
God's hands, God's plan.
but I will say, and dude, Crichton is so fucking base, dude. I need to
Mm.
like read some more Crichton because Michael Crichton is like,
It's
um,
very dudes rock
that's
too.
he is very dudes rock. He's also very normcore.
Yeah.
Like that, like Michael Crichton is like Tom Clancy
Yeah.
for dudes that like smoke weed.
Definitely, yeah.
So that whole critique you just gave is like, and I'm sure we've talked about it over all these years. That's the whole critique. That's the
Hmm.
whole thing that you just said, right? Um, and it's so applicable in this case because yeah, like all anyone can say is these abstractions about how it's climate change, and they can't say anything about the fact that they have completely failed in like forest management, and that
Yes.
like a lot of like housing developments are putting in, you know, plants that are basically just like fire starter, like little
Hmm.
tinder boxes, and like, and the fact that they were tapping fucking fire hydrants and there was no fucking water,
Yeah.
you know, like uh
I saw a
I
video of
don't
Gavin Newsom bragging about like emptying out one of the reserves like a few months ago. And then now that's like one of the reserves that's empty, that's like making it to where some of these fire hydrants don't have water. And it was just a crazy video. It popped up on my
people,
YouTube algorithm.
dude, this guy is a fucking retard, dude.
Hmm.
This guy is fucking all twisted up, man.
Very much
um
so. Let's see.
These people are sick. I'm telling you, they're sick.
But the thing with like the California fire is also um, like yeah, there, it's a tragedy for sure, and it's not good. But at the same time, it's like this is a fire area. Like you're building further and further out into fire territory, and then we're just expecting through hubris that nothing's going to happen. It's like, yeah, you built. It's like building a house in a floodplain. It's like, yeah, a flood will happen eventually, and it might not, for the time that affects you right now. But when a flood does come, it's not climate change. That's just what happens there sometimes, and that's kind of my thing with this fire. Like the Palisades and stuff are further out of the city, like to where they're in fire range more so. And I think that that's kind of the thing. Like we're as we expand out, we're developing in more and more precarious places, because we have like a more advanced technology and the means to
I
do
don't know
so.
if that's I don't know if that's super relevant in this case because I don't think this. I mean, people have lived in this place for quite a long time, and like this is the severity of this fire is like kind of unprecedented. It is like I think it's. I mean, no, I mean there is no. Okay, I think the point you're making is a good one. I think just to bridge the gap, I will just say, like, okay, because California is this kind of in a nutshell. You guys have a certain level of precarity, and like that's all right, right? You can do that, but like you need to do the necessary ways of addressing
Yeah.
that precarity, and like do your due motherfucking diligence.
Mhm.
And again, just to go like it's like equivalent of just like having someone just like run up and like stab someone on the side of the road, and the cops just like, oh well, you know, the sinful nature of man, people do bad things. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, dude, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like you're not people do bad things, and like obviously that, you know, like again, like you can say that climate change has something to do with this. I'm not even really that, I'm not quick to necessarily argue against that, right? It's just the framing, like the how that exists as a framing device is something I have an issue with.
Mhm.
And again, because it's just an eschatology, people refuse any level of nuance.
Yeah.
And so the second you just go, well, I want to have a nuanced take, people go, oh, shibboleth, you're minimizing and denying.
Yeah.
It's like, no, dude, I'm just talking about the fact that it's like, okay, bro, okay, we can acknowledge there's climate change. Isn't that all the more reason to do fucking forest management
Yeah,
and
yeah.
controlled burns and cleaning this shit the fuck up? Dude, we need to every time something bad happens like this, we need to talk about I don't know, I guess like completely restructuring our like market-based economy, which like I think that's cool and everything. That's not gonna happen
Yeah, yeah,
right
yeah,
now,
right, yeah.
as opposed to just talking about like, okay, like for sure that's like a cool idea, I like that. We should also like give a little bit of time to talk about the idea of like raking up some fucking
Yeah,
leaves,
you gotta
because that's,
triage.
yeah, because that's like probably more doable. Also, this, you know, at least for the time being, um this state is like famously full of people that professionally rake up leaves,
Mm.
so like it might be doable, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
as opposed to just being like, we need to nationalize Nestle,
Yeah.
which again, like, don't get me
We
wrong,
should.
that would be based,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I don't really know that like Gavin Newsom's going to be the guy that does
It's
that.
definitely
As a
not.
side note, either vamp for me or pause it. I'm like about to piss my pants.
Imma
Hold on.
pause it.
I've been slamming. Like, somehow my wife is like actually like significantly more based than me now. And I think that like getting pregnant kind of just starts it. I don't know
Oh,
what it
yeah.
is. Maybe it's marriage.
It's a
Anyways,
protective instinct almost, dude. Because all this other shit that's, like, not based is bad for kids and bad for human life fundamentally,
that's
so
that's very true. That's very true. Anyways, I don't know, regarding the California stuff. I mean, it's fucking sad. It's fucking scary. I saw a video. I think it's probably bullshit, but this video from like up on one of those peaks on the foothills, like
Mhm.
in Los Angeles, because you know like how they have those.
Yeah.
And it's basically just being like, here's the. This was in tandem with an infographic that a news station had of just covering like the mileage of it, and it's just like, dude, like this is this is like taking up like just a huge portion of the town.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, on the outskirts, right? It's like residential, but like the wind is extremely bad. The wind is like pushing it, I think, further toward like the downtown and
Mhm.
like Hollywood and shit like that. And like it's kind of like, if I think they have like, I think it's like less than 10% contained last time I checked. And
Yeah.
it's like the wind blows it toward like, I heard some people saying this was bullshit, and so I don't really quite know. But it's kind of one of these things. Just like, dude, like this could keep going. They don't have it under control. This could keep going and just completely burn LA down.
It very much so could, I think. I mean, they're in the middle of a Santa Ana wind kind of cycle right now, which is a common thing that
Mm-hmm.
happens there. The Steely Dan even wrote about it in Babylon Sisters. Here comes the Santa Ana winds
dude,
again.
it's Steely Dan confirmed.
Yeah, they're
That's
like the
our
Simpsons.
highest source on the podcast is concepts that Steely Dan have written songs
Pretty
about.
much, yeah. But that's the thing, like, and so they're in the middle of that, and that's like dry desert wind coming down. So it's like, I mean, worst case scenario for a fire for sure. But that is like a cycle that just happened. Like the dry desert winds happen in Santa Ana winds. That's like a weather pattern that happens all the time. Now, whether or not fires are always present during that, and you know how dry things are, or whatever, that's a different story. But I was reading a lot about how a lot of it has to do with building codes too. There were really strict regulations that went into place after a bunch of major fires in cities like in Chicago and stuff around the turn of the century in 1900s. And so they started putting into place all these regulations about like fire walls and all this different stuff. But they've like drastically stripped those away in the past few decades. And so there's less actual stuff in place to prevent the spreading of like urban fires, because this is not really a wildfire as much as it is urban fire now. And so I'm like, there's a lot of stuff where, like, yeah, I'm sure drier air and stuff like that's making it much worse. I mean, of course, if it was wet air, it would be better, of course, you know.
Dude,
So
we like on this podcast, we like wet air.
just moist, wet air. Yeah, yeah, we like that humidity, baby. I mean, I'm a product of humidity, and you kind of are too, I guess, up there, really. But that's the
Oh yeah.
thing. There's a lot of like actual just on the ground stuff that has nothing to do with climate change that's making this worse and exacerbating the situation.
Mhm.
And a lot of that stuff doesn't get looked at if your whole thing is, oh, it's climate change. And so like that's always my thing with the climate change thing. Um, I think the climate's always changing, and I think it always has. There's giant cycles of heating and cooling, and we have a cataclysmic past in our planet, and it's kind of made the planet what it is these giant cycles of either a rapid or gradual cooling and heating from different reasons. And we're like in the middle of one of those, and you could make an argument that human impact has led to more heat. You could definitely say that like around urban centers and stuff, but I'm not sure that it really tracks fully at a global scale beyond the rate that of heating that's already happened. But either way, the issue is when you start getting caught up in all that, you stop looking at like what are the actual on the ground things that are happening that are making this worse, like forest management, like the landscaping, like these building code issues with the type of materials that they use and how far they need to be apart and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that comes into play that doesn't get actually looked at in a meaningful way, or also the response to the fires and how they're handling it and that kind of thing. Now, there may be only so much that they can actually do, and I'm not going to say like it's the fire chief's problem or anything, but when you chalk it up to this big thing that you can't get your head all the way around, it makes it so you kind of paralyze people who are wanting to do the stuff that they can do in the moment. You know, we're no longer looking into the small localized and environmental stuff. We're instead working on this big climate thing. And so you have something like maybe like a while ago there was like torrential hurricane rainfall and stuff in Haiti, and it caused massive mudslides and landslides and everything like that. And the reason for the mudslides and the landslides was not because there was, you know, an unheard of amount of rain in that time. It was a lot of rain, but it wasn't, you know, above the historical amount or anything. It's because previous to that they had deforested so much of the island and
Yep.
eliminated so much of the roots that held the soil together. And so when that happened, it caused vast mudslides because there was nothing holding it together anymore. And now, is that a consequence of a human action? Yes, because we've deforested the whole area. But it's not because of like the CO2 in the air or anything like that. It's because of what's happening locally on the ground there. And if we sat around and said, oh, well, it's just because there's more moisture in the air because the CO2 has made it hotter and it's soaking up more moisture, and that's because, then we wouldn't be looking at, well, actually, it's the deforestation. And yes, you could say deforestation is part of the problem that's causing more carbon in the air and stuff, but that's like multiple layers away. So it might take you a while to get to like shutting down the deforestation if your focus is all these numbers and global temperature and stuff like that, and not, hey, there's no more fucking trees in our backyard. Why have we done that? And I think that's
Yep.
the issue. It's like if we were all more focused on local environmental issues, which I think people are motivated to, people don't want their backyard to be filled with trash. They don't want their skies to be gray. They don't want their local rivers to be poisonous. So if you just clean all that shit up, the impact that that will have as far as regulating the industries that are causing that will ultimately be a net positive for the global climate and global environment in a way that, you know, incentivizing climate neutral companies won't help, because that's not actually addressing those things. That's just like a moral laundering scheme. And I think that that's like when you focus on the global climate abstract thing, it opens up the door for all these kind of like workarounds to where big industries can say, well, we're doing our part. We're going to be climate friendly and carbon neutral by 2050. But what do they actually mean by that? And it means that they're going to continue to ravage the places that they're ravaging, but they're going to plant a few trees and some open fields down the street. So it's like, does that actually is that actually a positive? Does that actually cancel out an equal neutral? I don't think so. But on paper, it makes it to where you can do that. Or you can say, oh, we switched to completely electric vehicles now, so we're not using the fossil fuels. And then it just, you don't think about all the issues that are caused by the electric vehicles and where does that power come from. And so when we abstract it in such a way, it makes us nearly incapable of doing the on the ground day to day stuff that needs to be happening right now in a tangible sense. And that's my whole thing with the climate change always. And I don't know exactly how, I haven't looked into the California fires nearly enough to see like, well, how much could be actually chalked up to climate change and how much is just local issues. But I think that there's definitely a conversation to be had there that's like, let's not just immediately put this on climate change. Let's look at the management that's being done. Let's look at the building codes. Let's just look at the history of the area and how are we prepared or not prepared for the disasters that we know happen here.
Well, also like, it's one of those things where it's just like I'm done even having the stupid struggle with these people of being like, it's climate change. No, it's not climate change. It's like fucking whatever. It's
Yeah, yeah.
climate change. Let's I'm going to acknowledge I gain and lose nothing by just being like fucking whatever. It's climate change. Give me a immediate, localized, quantifiable thing to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the same. It's the same thing. You know what it's like? It's like this with homelessness, right?
God, yes, yeah.
People go, man, we need to clean up. We need to do something about homelessness. And people go, well, I mean, yeah, you need to make it so that people can afford to live in this city. Blah blah blah. And they talk about like we need to address the conditions that are creating homeless people, right? No, that's for sure. That's true. It doesn't make any sense for me to argue against that,
Hmm.
right? But what you're doing is you're framing this discussion away from the fact that I also literally need something to be done about the guy standing in front of my fucking apartment who's like threatening to kill me,
Right, yeah, yeah. He's still
right?
there. Yeah, yeah. So go tell him
Yeah,
just to wait until we figure out all the systemic conditions that created
yeah,
whatever the hell he's got going on.
yeah. No, exactly. Like your neighbor's kid tripped and fell on a needle and has like hepatitis now. Like we need to address that. We don't need to have an eternal struggle against the abstract concept of poverty,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like that's good, and we should do that, right? And we like should, as a general sense, uh, take seriously, this mantle of stewardship over the planet, and that's a great thing, right?
Hmm.
How does that how does that how does that materialize in LA County specifically, and specifically to do with fire management? I
Right.
think we can all agree on things here, except that you don't want to fucking agree on things here. You want to fucking just argue with the chuds, and the chuds are fucking retards
Yeah.
and just want to argue with you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a waste of fucking time. It's a waste of fucking time. Um, yeah, it's sad, man. It's
Hmm.
sad.
Yeah, that's my thing about the whole fire situation. I mean, it's impossible to look at it and not just think it's a tragedy and it's sad. Like people are losing their homes, people are losing, family heirlooms or whatever that they had to leave in their home and evacuate and everything like that. And then the conversations that come up around it are just very much so using it as a political topic or whatever towards political gain, and rather than actually just like engaging with how do we actually help make these people's lives any better and help to prevent this in the future or anything like that. Instead, it's just like it becomes a debate about climate change or about whatever. It's like, let's just kind of sit down and try to just maybe we can hold both of these things at the same time. Like, yes, there maybe the global climate is changing, and but also let's like try to figure out what's going on here locally. And I don't think that that's very hard. I think it's a very sensible. I think it's a sensible way to approach it. It's like, okay, sure, I'll give you that climate change is happening. I'm not sure that I really agree on the specifics of what you think, but if that's what we need in order for you to sit down and talk about tangible next steps, then let's just say it, and then let's just try to
Well,
move forward with
they
that.
they don't mean anything
Yeah,
as far as specifics go.
right.
That's the other thing, is that it's literally just like, no, you're just trying to create this framing device that there's like a meteor heading towards Earth that's going to destroy everyone, and it's like, that's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's,
Mm,
you're just saying that there's a doomsday. That's
yes.
not. What the fuck am I supposed to do about that?
Right,
What the
yeah.
fuck am I supposed to do about that? Like, reduce this to, anyways, I'm kind of getting fired up about this.
Yeah.
um
Fired
it's
up,
it's
no
all
pun intended.
it's all just to say, and the reason I brought that up was, in the past I would go, all right, well, this fire's going, and yeah, no pun intended, that was a delayed reaction on my part. It Right now, libs are getting all in a tizzy saying it's climate change, and in the past I would be like, this is just going to be used to reify their premises, and it's actually just going to make things worse, right? Like, that's what January 6th was, right? Like, it was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
funny afternoon, and then it was like, no, you just made it significantly worse, right? I actually don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think that this is going to feed into the narrative. I don't think that this is going to feed into the feedback, the positive feedback loop. I think that the vibe shift means vibe shift. Like,
Mm.
it has happened. It is continuing to happen, and I think that man, I don't know, man. Like, I think in the same way that Trudeau got resigned, and it kind of was just this, you know, they had to come out and just admit that Biden was senile and it was a failure, and that no one liked Kamala, and that the emperor wears no clothes. And then we finally get that pressure relief with Trudeau, and he's a fucking disaster, and his approval ratings are in the tank, and everyone fucking hates him, and he resigns, right?
Hmm.
Humiliated. And I think this is the moment like that for California and Newsom. And I think it's going to be remembered that way, and I don't think it's going to be remembered in the way that reinforces this other narrative.
I think
And
so.
I think that, like I said, I think vibe shift means vibe shift. Now, I also think that that there is something also kind of like empire in decline
Hmm.
about the California thing a little bit, where it's like, and the it was North Dakota, right? Or North Carolina,
North Carolina.
with North Carolina, of just we can't like take care of our own fucking country,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I mean, I
And
saw
there's
the Biden administration announce plans to send 500 million more dollars to the Ukraine the day after all of the fires broke on the news. And then they had
Yeah,
all their people, out there. Well, you got to remember that foreign aid and domestic aid to come from different, you know, banks and different departments. So the money that's going to Ukraine is not actually affecting. It doesn't equal money that's going away from fighting the, fires or rebuilding or whatever. And it's like, yeah, sure, on paper you can make it look like it's coming from different places, but at the same time, it's like it's American tax money, and we could shift it from that one place over to California if there was the political will to do so, or to North Carolina to help rebuild. And instead, we're focused on sending fucking money over to Ukraine, which I know is again a tired talking point that plenty of people have pointed out. But
I'm
that
just
just
I'm just paying an OnlyFans subscription while my daughter doesn't have while we don't have any money for diapers for my daughter. She's just crying, and I'm just talking to my wife like, I'm sorry, the money was set aside for OnlyFans. This money is for the OnlyFans. The money for diapers just isn't there. What do you want me to do about it?
yeah, it's
And
very much like that.
CPS is just knocking on my door, and they're like, hey, so, and I'm like, but what do you want me to do about it? No, these people are fucking sophists. They always have some stupid fucking thing about that, where they're like, well, actually, if you understood the technicalities of the technocracy, you would understand that actually this critique is totally illegitimate. It's like,
Yeah,
actually, you're actually so self-satisfied in how intellectual you think you are that you're so fucking stupid. You're a
right.
fucking retard. And the smarter you think you are, the more retarded it's making you. Shut the fuck up.
Hmm. Yeah, any proper country or government that's actually looking out for its people and its nation and its constituents would, in a time of major crisis, would reallocate money to help that crisis, even if it's like there's red tape or whatever where this is actually a pool for some other kind of thing. It's still the government's fucking money, so they can.
I basically assume that like if we deployed the U.S. Army, like just to any there is a certain point of like degrees of how much we like deploy troops.
Yeah,
We could basically solve any one of these problems
100%.
essentially in a way that would be akin to magic,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like and like I'm sure that like again some sophists could just be like, well, you don't understand how forest fires are fought, and like you can't just send so many guys with hoses to do, where's the I don't care. Like I
We could fix
like
it. Yeah, I think we could.
the
We could
U.S.
stop it.
Yeah, the U.S. military is so motherfucking titanic. You can't. I am convinced if you just like if you deployed and got everybody out there as many as you can, this fire could be done in like a day.
Yeah, and even if
And
it's still
I'm
burnt, they could rebuild in a super fast and timely manner.
yeah
And that's not what's happening. Like you look at somewhere like North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee, where the Hurricane Helene happened, and there was massive devastation there. Lots of infrastructure problems. People's entire homes being floated away down the river. You look at that place, and the response from like the National Guard and the American Army and stuff, like Corps of Engineers, has been pretty stingy. Like instead of like you could the way that they put army bases all over the fucking world in the flash of an instant, they just the blink of an eye, there's now an entire army base for 3,000 fucking troops in the middle of this godforsaken desert. They could build that same shit for the people in North Carolina who need the shelter as they approach winter. And instead they've got the goddamn Amish out there working day and night to try to build tiny houses for these people because the government won't fucking do like there's enough resources, there's enough manpower in the government, there's enough know-how in the army, in our military to fix these problems. Even if we can't put the fire out or stop the rain, we could get in there immediately after and rebuild these people to have some basic sense of security. Maybe you can't rebuild the house exactly like it was or whatever, but you can get there and provide some level of shelter, running water, basic necessities way faster than what they've been doing. And through the work of the community and people pitching in, like the Amish country and stuff who've come down and offered their time and services, it is coming together. And that's like the resiliency of like what we were talking about earlier in the episode, where a natural disaster or a major event requires you to lean on your community way more and find out what your real community looks like and that kind of thing.
yeah.
And thank God for that. And people have a desire to help the people around them, but it shouldn't have to be all that. We pay money to a government. We have this immense fund and these immense resources that we spend all over the world. We should be using that to help our people in time of need. And that's like there's no argument against that makes any sense as an American. You could be arguing for some other interests, other nationalities' interests or multinational interests, but as an American, arguing against that is just like it's treason almost. There's nothing. What's more important than fixing homes for other Americans that have lost them in a major tragedy? And what the fuck is the government for? Like, we all come together, like, in the ideal world, right? The idealized version of the world, there's a social contract, and it's like, we've chosen our government, and our government's there for us, and we provide a sense of security for the country, and all this and all that. And so the function of the government in that, idealized kind of worldview is that they would protect or add some safety net or some sense of continuity for the country in times of strain or big issue or whatever. Well, they're happening and they're not anywhere to help, and the people are left holding the bag. And that isn't a
Well,
huge indictment.
this is a really good example of just the fact that like like America, the American empire on the global stage and the foreign policy establishment of the United States is like fundamentally a different thing than the United States as
Yeah.
we understand it. It's like basically a rogue nation. It like doesn't serve our interests.
It's at
all.
odds with them.
It's completely at odds with it. It's basically a different thing
Yeah.
than like the actual United States as such. And it's a great example of it. And they don't give a fuck about us. and they make us less safe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I think the stuff in LA, the stuff in North Carolina is really sad. Obviously, the stuff in LA has maybe a little bit of a punching up quality to it,
Yeah.
because it's kind of in a gallows humor kind of way. It's a little funny that it's just like all the richest people's houses burning down.
And it's visually
I'm sure that's
striking. Like, it's kind of like
it's
a,
quite well. There's something fucking bizarre about like it's not a wildfire in wooded rural land. It's like just like it's like in a it is a section of like the second biggest city in the country.
yeah.
Like that's just like if there was just like a big forest fire in New York City. It's like what the
Yeah,
fuck?
that'd be crazy.
What the fuck is this?
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, it's not all rich people, but there are definitely high income places that have been wiped out from it, like, the Palisades or whatever, where you
Yeah.
have um, these massive, like, kind of mansions, and then you have like Ferraris and stuff, and then people left in such a haste that, like, I've seen pictures now of like a Lamborghini sitting outside of just completely burnt down house that's like charred up. It's just such a shocking visual, because of the opulence that was there that's now burnt down and crumbled completely. It's like Rome burning or something. You're like, wow, what the fuck is going on here? And I think there's a class element to it too, where people are kind of like, almost like the Luigi thing, where it's like, yeah, a man lost his life and like that's tragic, but people are looking at it, it's like, yeah, it's a CEO of a healthcare company lost his life. I don't really care as much about it. And I do think that that's kind of in play with the LA thing, like where people are like, it's a bunch of fucking rich people with their like non-primary residence that's burnt down over here, and they got Lamborghinis parked out front, and now we have celebrities setting up GoFundMe's. It's like, give me a break to an extent. And I know that's kind of not nuanced of looking at, like, there are poor people who live in the areas that are affected too and everything, of course. And it's still a tragedy for people that have money. I mean, that's still a massive thing that's wiped out, in house physical memories and that kind of thing. But there is, I think, a level where people are kind of less, people are more infatuated with the whole thing happening and like, wow, that's nuts, than they are like completely devastated by it, I think.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I don't know. It's always such a delicate trap you need to kind of navigate when you just see again. Well, it's funny. It's this perfect symmetry in a lot of ways between the left's response to Luigi and the right's response to the LA
Yeah.
fires, where it's just like I think about this a lot. I think about it specifically with like the role of like soldier, which is kind of just like a universal thing in all cultures. Like you need a guy who takes on the job of basically being like, I'm going to do the necessary role of like doling out violence
Yeah.
to ensure that this is all maintained. And like the sad thing about that is that in the case of certain people, I mean, obviously there's certain just like psychopaths that this doesn't apply to, but that doesn't really account for most people, is that like you're like asking people to like kind of sacrifice a certain part of their soul in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like you need to kind of like give up a certain level of your innocence and purity to be the violence dealer, and have like you should have a healthy understanding of the fact that it's like, no, like killing people is not, that's like what always has creeped me out about like leftoids being like I mean, it's funny because I'm saying leftoid and that's dehumanizing.
Yeah.
I won't undercut my point in that way. Leftists doing the like, well, Nazis aren't people, so like it's totally fine to kill them however you want.
Yeah.
It's like the thing is that they are people,
Mm.
and that there's like and that like actually like the whole situation is actually just like so much more miserable
Mm-hmm.
than I think your view is allowing it to be, which is that like these are people doing something super evil,
Yeah.
and like killing them is also fucking sad and fucked up because it's a fucking human being,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who also could have not been evil in
Right.
another life,
And if you
and
want
not
to,
done evil shit.
if you want to stop something like that from happening in the future, which is like the main impetus for most leftist thought, it's like we have to stop the threat of fascism and Nazis, like, especially in the postmodern kind of era. That's very much so what the basis
Right.
of justification for leftist philosophy is in many ways. If you really think that, then you have to understand that these are people, because if you keep saying, well, they're not humans or whatever, then you don't even need to look into what causes people to believe these things, or how did it come up? How did so many people create such a vile, machine? How did they act out these vile things? How did they believe these things? And if you just say, well, they're not even human beings, it's like they're inhuman, well, you're never going to understand that mechanism. And if you can't understand it, then how the fuck do you hope to prevent it?
100%. 100%.
Man, dude, there's a lot going on in the world. If there's the fires going on in the world, there's the Canada thing with Trudeau, which I have to be honest, I don't know almost anything about that. I just
I know.
saw.
I barely even want to talk about it because it's like I'm just so out of the know. I don't even think anything that happens up there is real.
Yeah, it's hard for me to even wrap my head around Canada as being like a real place to think about. I have been trying to toy with the idea of like a North American pride, like just like getting people like, before we start getting it more globalized or whatever, let's at least kind of like touch base with our neighbors. Let's touch base with Mexico. Let's touch base with Canada. So I've been trying to, think about them a little bit more. And then you have stuff like, rumors and that are swirling around that like Trump wants to annex Canada, is what I've been seeing on the news or whatever, and acquire Greenland and shit like that, which who knows what that's about. But that's like what I'm seeing everywhere, and I wonder how that dovetails into the whole thing with what's going on with Trudeau. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm not. I feel like we should get someone on. I know we've talked about maybe a specific Canadian, but we can maybe reach out and see if he can come on and maybe enlighten us a little bit more on the Canada situation.
100%. We need the Leaf perspective on here.
Because I just know that Justin Trudeau's a sick freak, and I know that for sure. But I know he has kind of a fun
He's kind
side
of
to him.
twisted. He's kind of a twisted little guy.
He's got tremendous hate in his heart.
I want to say, just as a quick side note, me and my wife have just like, I don't know what, I think one of us pointed it out that just I don't mean to make this weird, but your use of the word call, I might have said this already. Your use of calling people twisted and twisted up has become like a meme in our house.
Hell yeah.
Where just like if someone just does something we don't like, or they're just kind of a little freak or something, we're just like a little twisted up little freak.
Hell yeah.
Twisted. And it's just fucking funny, dude. Like, just I also just really like calling people little freaks.
Oh yeah, I've leaned into sick little freak. Like the exact phrase "sick little freak" is like that's what I'm leaning on right now.
Dude, Justin Trudeau's a sick little fucking freak who's also pretty fucking twisted up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, he has a little bit of a fun side, a little risque. He's doing blackface and India face, so I mean, you gotta.
A broken clock's right twice a day,
yeah.
right? But
he's kind of like a Hunter Biden in a sense. I feel like, where it's like,
or he's party rocking.
Yeah, he's party rocking, but it's like not good. Like what I mean? You're like, that's not admirable.
Hunter shows up to the party and he's like, "What up, guys? Can we like smoke some weed?" And you're like, "Yeah, hell yeah." He's like, "Can we do some blow?" And we're like, "Yeah, all right. I mean, sure, whatever, right?" "Can we do some crack?" And it's like, "Well, I mean, come on, Hunter." And he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna fuck a couple little Chinese kids in the corner over here. How you feel about that?" And we're like, "Dude, Hunter, you gotta leave, dude. Like, you haven't been paying rent, man. Get the fuck out of here."
Trudeau just pops in looking like Prince of Persia. What are you doing, bro?
Dude, he's gonna use the Prince of Persia Sands of Time ability to undo his resignation.
Yeah, go back in time. Man, I was thinking about Prince of Persia the other day for the first time, and it was like a major unlocking of like deep memory for me. I was like, what is that dude. Persian guy? It's like got big pants on and throws sand around.
Yeah, Aladdin.
Yeah, Aladdin, pretty much.
Dude, Prince of Persia, old school Ubisoft game. Fucking Ubisoft's about to fucking go out of business, bro.
Really?
Yeah, dude, they're on like a years-long streak of just nothing but duds, and then their newest game that's coming out has been getting all this fucking culture war attention because it's like it's the first Assassin's Creed game set in Japan.
Oh,
and I guarantee you've seen stuff about this. And the main character is fucking We Was Samurais, is a fucking black guy, and everyone's like, "What are you doing, dude?" And and then they've delayed the game like 5 times, and like it's a
They keep
mess, dude.
changing the race of the guy. They're like, all right, black doesn't work, I guess. All right, make him white. And they're like, fuck no, white savior doesn't work either. What do we do?
Dude, Tom Cruise already did it. We can't be doing that, dude.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, it could just be a Japanese guy, and they're like, no, no, of course not.
No, it needs to be interesting.
Yeah, exactly, dude. We hate the Japanese.
Dude, I've been
Um,
getting big into sumo wrestling, and I mean not like big
Sumo's
into it,
based.
but I've been like, I one day I went over to my friend's house and he was watching like highlights of a recent sumo wrestling tournament on YouTube, and I was like, "Yo, what the fuck?" Because I just never even knew that that was an option. Like I never thought, "Oh, I could stream sumo and get into it like I do, basketball or whatever." But you can. And there's like English breakdowns of sumo and stuff like that. But so it opened this door for me where I started watching some sumo matches. I'm like, that's crazy. And then I like looked up in a little bit of the culture to see what is the history of sumo and what does it mean for the Japanese. And it's so to me it's really perfect as like a little microcosm of like traditional culture under attack by modern globalism in a major way, because
Yeah,
there's all these like things that come up in it because it's very much so baked into the identity of Japan. Like the cultural identity of Japan is tied to sumo wrestling because it's like part of their lore. Like the very first sumo match ever like that ever happened was a mythological battle of these two gods over who had control over the islands of Japan. And so then that's like on record as the first ever sumo match. And then from there they started holding rituals, and it's like it's almost in like the religion, like the Shinto or whatever the religion is of Japan, like the kind of cosmology. But also it's like Japan's westernized a lot in the past, since World War II specifically, but it has westernized dramatically. And because of that, sumo has lost some of its prevalence in society. But now, something that's happening is like there's a resurgence in sumo, and you're getting a lot of young people, specifically like they have this huge, like what we would have Taylor Swift fans over here. They have that, but it's like teenage girls who are just obsessed with sumo. And I think that there's a level where it's like here's this extremely traditional thing that exists within this wildly modern culture, and because of it at first it seeped into it and made it lose some of what its essence was, and they had a lot of foreigners and they had more corruption and stuff that happened into sumo. um, and then now it's like it's having a little bit of a revival in a sense, because I think that there's like people are seeing that they're longing for a sense of tradition and a tie to a more traditional culture or existence, and so they're kind of returning to sumo in a way. um and so it's just very interesting, and I've been watching it with a friend of mine who's kind of lived up, not like in a major way, but more worried about patriarchy and stuff than I would ever want to talk about. And I'm talking with them about some of these issues in sumo that's coming up, and they're like, yeah, there's a lot of debate on whether or not like the influence of foreign cultures and westerns and stuff is changing the essence of sumo, and is it something that can be appreciated by outside cultures, or is it something that's strictly tied into the essence of what a Japanese person is and what it means to be Japanese. And so it I was able to have a really good conversation about the kind of the disappearance of traditionalism and how that leads into these like negative cultural changes, but through the lens of this sumo thing with someone who would otherwise not be very open to talking about that. If I flipped it and I talked about baseball and American identity, it would be something that's kind of off limits. But because it's more exotic and it's like, oh, I'm talking about these Japanese people, I'm saying that they should be able to maintain something that's traditionally theirs. That's like allowed a door for me into talking about traditionalism with this person who would otherwise be closed off to it, because it's like, oh, this is something that's it's good because it's foreign, you know what I mean? Like that's like part of the ideology. It's like, oh, foreign people in other countries can't do as bad of shit as we can here because they're the untouched savage or whatever. But because of that, it's allowed me to have some really in-depth conversations about like how does modernity and globalism strip away the essence of what it means to be a people, and then how does one regain that essence, and how important is that essence as a person? And it made me think a lot about like the Daison or whatever, the Heideggerian thing that's like the essence of a people and their sense like that.
Oh, Dasein.
Dasein, yeah. And I only ever read the word, so that's a lot of words for me. Where I've only ever read it, and I've never heard someone say it, and I'm like, how does this actually work? But it's been
it does not come up all that often.
No.
I think I think it's funny too, because most of the time you'll be like, oh, like traditional culture, like European, and people will be like, yeah, I mean that's bad because it like is genocidal,
Right.
It's led to suffering, and then the idea that a normie wouldn't apply that to the Japanese
Yeah.
is extremely funny. It is funny. I mean, I remember. I think it was like. I remember when someone pointed out to me I had it pointed out that, like, if you actually think about it, like the argument against cultural appropriation is kind of reactionary because it's about like maintaining traditional cultures.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's kind of like the best example of exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like cultural appropriation for is like only for non-white cultures.
Yeah.
And all of that. It is quite funny. There's a funny contradiction there. I'm sure that people don't have the tools to actually see that.
Right.
But it's bullshit. On that note, I need to fucking get busy feeding my fucking family.
Yeah, get you.
So I think I'm gonna
get in the kitchen.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna pack it in.
Word, dude. Get into the kitchen and do some work.
Oh no, I'm having an existential crisis.
You're a line cook again. Fuck.
Oh no, I'm not getting tipped.
These people are sick.
This is obviously a very, very sick individual. These people are the sickest of them all. These people are sick. They are sick. And you better get used to hearing it. These people are sick.